Jake Morrison carried his travel container through the main gates of Zenith Military Academy and tried not to look nervous. The building stretched up into the purple sky of Valara Prime, all glass and silver metal that caught the light of 3 distant suns. Ships moved overhead, their engines humming. Aliens walked past him in every direction, and Jake reminded himself that he belonged here. The acceptance letter had said so. He was the 3rd human ever admitted to the academy. The first 2 had graduated 5 years ago, and were now commanding officers in the Galactic Defense Coalition. No pressure. The container in his hands shifted. Something heavy moved inside it, and Jake adjusted his grip. A staff member with blue skin and 4 arms pointed him toward the cadet barracks. Jake nodded his thanks and headed that way. The barracks room held 8 beds, 4 on each side. Jake found his assigned bunk and set the container down carefully. 3 other cadets were already there, unpacking their things. They looked up when he entered. The first one had silver fur covering his body and large eyes that seemed too big for his face. He wore the standard cadet uniform, which looked strange on his small frame. "Greetings," he said in perfect standard language. "I am Sixis of Valara. Welcome to our quarters, Jake Morrison." "Earth," Jake said. He shook the offered hand, noting how delicate the bones felt. The second cadet was insectoid, with a hard shell that gleamed green and black. Multiple eyes studied Jake. "Clickresh," the cadet said, the words clicking and buzzing. "Cathar system." The third cadet had rough gray skin and stood nearly 7 feet tall. "Vacuum, from Drenthia," he rumbled. Jake greeted them all and started unpacking his gear. The other cadets did the same, pulling out standard equipment, personal items, and then their companion animals. Sixes reached into a small carrier and lifted out something that made Jake smile. It looked like a furry ball with tiny legs no bigger than an apple. It chirped and Sixes placed it on his desk. The creature immediately curled up and closed its eyes. "A comfort pet from my world," Sixes explained. "She helps with stress. Academy regulations allow 1 companion animal." Clickresh opened his container next. A small larva crawled out, glowing soft blue and green. It was maybe 6 inches long and moved slowly across Clickresh's desk. The insectoid cadet made pleased clicking sounds. Vokum's companion was a tiny mammal with huge eyes and soft brown fur. It climbed onto Vokum's shoulder and grabbed his collar with small hands. It couldn't have weighed more than a pound. All 3 cadets looked at Jake's container. "It was much larger than theirs. What about you?" Sixes asked. "Did you bring a companion from Earth?" "Yeah," Jake said. He moved to the container and undid the latches. "I brought 2, actually. The regulations said 1 animal, but these 2 are brothers. They wouldn't separate well." He opened the container. 2 large shapes tumbled out onto the floor, rolling and play-fighting with each other. They were covered in brown fur, had round ears, and long claws that clicked on the metal floor. Each one was already the size of a large dog, and they moved with power that shook the ground. The grizzly bear cubs looked around the room with dark eyes. Then they spotted Jake's desk and scrambled toward it, climbing up and sprawling across the surface. Their legs dangled over the edges. One yawned, showing a mouth full of sharp teeth. The room went silent. Sixes backed against the wall, his small companion pet trembling in his hands. Clickresh's antennae flattened against his head. Falcom's eyes went wide, and he slowly reached for the emergency call button near his bed. "Everyone, meet Atlas and Dakota," Jake said, walking over to scratch behind their ears. The cubs leaned into his touch, making content huffing sounds. "They're grizzly bears." "Well, cubs right now." "Cubs?" Sixes whispered. "How large do they grow?" "Adults can hit about 800 pounds. Maybe more if they eat well," Jake said. He didn't notice how the other cadets looked at each other in panic. Atlas rolled onto his back, paws in the air, clearly asking for belly rubs. Dakota swatted at his brother, starting another wrestling match that made the desk shake. Jake laughed and separated them gently. "By the 7 suns," Vokum breathed. "Those are apex predators." "Well, yeah," Jake agreed. "But they're trained. I've had them since they were born. My family runs a bear sanctuary back home. These 2 were orphaned, so I raised them." "Orphaned by what?" Clickresh asked, his voice higher than normal. "Their mother was hit by a transport vehicle. Happens sometimes near human settlements," Jake explained. "We took the cubs in. They're really gentle once they know you." Sixes looked like he might faint. His small companion was now hiding inside his jacket. "Gentle? Those claws could tear through hull plating." "Only if they wanted to," Jake said. "But they don't. They're good boys." He pulled out 2 large bowls and filled one with water, the other with specially prepared food. The cubs hopped down from the desk and ate eagerly. The door opened. A reptilian officer entered, datapad in hand. Commander Yelix was making his rounds, checking that all cadets had settled properly. He looked at his pad, then at the room, then froze. His eyes locked onto the bears. Dakota had finished eating and was now investigating the commander's boots with interest. Atlas remained by his bowl, crunching loudly. Cadet Morrison, Commander Yelix said slowly. His voice was very controlled. What species are those animals? Grizzly bears, sir. Ursus arctos horribilis, if you want the scientific name, Jake said, standing at attention. They're my registered companions. I have all the paperwork from Earth. Commander Yelix looked at the cubs, which had now noticed him and were watching with interest. Dakota took a step closer, sniffing. The commander took a step back. Those are classified as apex predators, the commander said. Yes, sir. On Earth, humans often keep apex predators as companions. It's pretty common. Common, Commander Yelix repeated. He tapped on his datapad, pulling up Earth's wildlife database. His eyes moved across the screen and his scales seemed to pale. Your planet has over 40 documented species of large predators that regularly kill prey animals. And humans keep them as pets? Some of them, sir. Dogs are domesticated wolves. Lots of people have cats, which are small predators. Some folks keep bigger animals if they're trained properly, Jake explained. Commander Yelix stared at him, then at the bears. Dakota had decided the commander was interesting and sat down directly in front of him, looking up with what Jake knew was a friendly expression. To everyone else in the room, it probably looked like the cub was deciding whether to attack. Cadet Morrison, please come with me, Commander Yelix said. Bring your companions. Am I in trouble, sir? That remains to be determined. Follow me now, Jake called to Atlas and Dakota. The cubs responded immediately, trotting after him like well-trained dogs. Their claws clicked on the floor with each step. As Jake left the room, he heard Sixies let out a long breath and Vokum say something in his native language that sounded like a prayer. They walked through the corridors of the academy. Other cadets and staff members saw them coming and pressed themselves against the walls. Some gasped. Others ran. One instructor dropped an entire stack of data pads. Atlas and Dakota seemed happy, their tongues hanging out as they walked. To them, this was an adventure. To everyone else, it looked like Jake Morrison was walking through the academy with 2 mobile death machines that could snap bones with their jaws. Commander Yelix led them to an office at the end of a long hallway. The door read Commandant Thresher, Academy Director. The commander pressed the call button. Enter, a voice said from inside. They went in. Commandant Thresher looked up from his desk, saw the bears, and very slowly set down the stylus he had been holding. He was Valerian like Sixies, but older, with silver fur and deep eyes that had seen decades of military service. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Atlas yawned. The sound of his jaws clicking shut was very loud in the quiet office. Commander Yelix, Commandant Thresher said calmly. Please tell me why there are 2 juvenile apex predators in my office. They belong to Cadet Morrison, sir. He brought them as his registered companions. The Commandant looked at Jake. Explain. Jake stood at attention while Atlas and Dakota sat beside him. The cubs seemed to sense this was important and stayed quiet. Their ears moved, listening to every sound in the office. Sir, the Academy regulations state that each cadet may bring 1 companion animal to help with stress and morale during training, Jake began. I submitted my application 6 months ago with all required documentation. I received approval 2 weeks before arrival. Commandant Thresher tapped his desk screen. Files appeared in the air between them. Jake could see his own application, stamped with multiple approval codes. The Commandant scrolled through pages of medical records, behavioral assessments, and training certifications. The approval was processed by automated systems, Commandant Thresher said. No one actually looked at what species you were bringing. The system checked everything, sir. Atlas and Dakota passed all health screenings. They have full vaccinations. They're trained in basic commands and socialization protocols, Jake said. Cadet Morrison, the Commandant said, his voice very patient. Are you aware that every other species in the Galactic Defense Coalition brings companion animals that are herbivores or very small omnivores? The Valerian comfort pets eat seeds and berries. The Drenthian companions consume plant matter. Even the Cthari larvae only eat processed nutrient paste. I did notice the other cadets had smaller animals, sir, Jake admitted. Smaller? Commander Yelix made a sound like a strangled laugh. Cadet, your companions could eat the other companion animals. For breakfast, Dakota's ears perked up at the word breakfast. He looked hopefully at Jake. They would never do that, sir, Jake said quickly. They're trained to be gentle with smaller creatures. Back home, they lived with cats and dogs. Never hurt any of them. Commandant Thresher pulled up another file. This one showed Earth's ecosystem data. Images of animals appeared. Wolves, lions, tigers, crocodiles, sharks. Each one was marked with threat assessments. The numbers were all in red. Your planet, the Commandant said slowly, has more apex predators per square mile than any other inhabited world in the Coalition. The mortality rate from animal attacks was significant until your species developed modern technology. Well, yes, sir. Earth is pretty dangerous, Jake agreed. But that's why humans learned to work with predators instead of just running from them. We domesticated wolves into dogs over 30,000 years ago. We've kept big cats, bears, and birds of prey for thousands of years. It's part of our culture. Work with predators, Commander Yelix repeated. Cadet. Most species consider that suicidal. Atlas chose that moment to walk over to the Commandant's desk. He rose on his hind legs, put his front paws on the edge, and looked at the Commandant with interest. At his full stretch, the cub's head was level with the Commandant's face. This close, everyone could see the muscles under Atlas's fur, the size of his paws, the length of his claws. The Commandant sat very still. Atlas sniffed toward him, then made a friendly chuffing sound. Atlas, down, Jake said firmly. The cub immediately dropped to all fours and returned to Jake's side. Sorry, sir. He was just curious. Curious, Commandant Thresher said. He looked at Commander Yelix. Get Dr. Morena up here. Now. While they waited, the Commandant read through more of Jake's files. The cubs got bored and started playing with each other, rolling on the floor. Their play-fighting looked violent to the officers, all teeth and claws, but Jake knew they were being gentle. This was how bears played. Break it up, guys, Jake said when they got too loud. Both cubs stopped immediately and sat down looking at him for the next command. Good boys. The door opened and a female Valerian entered. She was older than sixes, with gray mixed into her silver fur. She wore a research coat instead of a military uniform. Dr. Morena was the Academy's xenopsychology expert. She saw the bears and her eyes went wide. But unlike the others, she didn't look scared. She looked fascinated. Oh my, she said. Are these from Earth? Yes, Doctor, Commandant Thresher said. This is Cadet Morrison and his companion animals. I need your assessment on whether they present a danger to the Academy. Dr. Morena walked closer, watching the cubs. May I approach them? Sure, Jake said. They're friendly. Just move slowly and let them sniff your hand first. She did exactly that, extending her hand low and to the side. Dakota came forward, sniffed carefully, then licked her fingers. Dr. Morena laughed. Remarkable, she said. His saliva composition is designed to break down meat proteins, yet he's showing affection behaviors typically seen in cooperative pack species. Bears aren't really pack animals in the wild, Jake explained. But these two were raised with humans, so they bonded with us like family. Like family, Dr. Morena repeated. She pulled out a scanner and ran it over Dakota, who tolerated the attention. Commandant, may I ask the cadet some questions? Please do, Dr. Morena turned to Jake. How long have you cared for these animals? Since they were 3 weeks old. About 9 months now. And you raised them yourself? My family helped, but yeah, mostly me. I fed them, trained them, slept near their pen so they wouldn't get lonely, Jake said. Were you ever afraid they might hurt you? Jake considered that. When they were really young, no. They were tiny. As they got bigger, I learned to read their body language. If they're upset or scared, they show it. I avoid doing things that stress them out. It's about respect and trust. Respect, Dr. Morena said. You respect apex predators. Of course. They're strong and smart. If I don't respect that, someone could get hurt, Jake said. Same way you respect any powerful force. You don't fear it. You work with it. Dr. Morena looked at the Commandant. I need to run a full behavioral assessment. But my initial observation is that these animals pose minimal threat. They're juveniles, yes, but they respond to commands and show bonded behavior toward their human. The risk comes not from the animals themselves, but from other cadets panicking around them. That's my concern, Commandant Thresher said. We have 200 cadets in this academy from 40 different species. Many evolved as prey animals. Having apex predators walking the halls could create serious psychological stress. It could, Dr. Morena agreed. Or it could be an unprecedented learning opportunity. The Commandant raised an eyebrow. Explain. Humans are the newest species to join the coalition. We know very little about their psychology. But this, she gestured to the bears, tells us something important. Humans don't just survive alongside apex predators. They befriend them. They bring them into their homes. They trust creatures that could kill them easily. What does that say about human psychology? That they're insane? Commander Yellick suggested. Or that they have a completely different relationship with danger than we do, Dr. Morena said. Every species in the coalition domesticated animals that were smaller and weaker than themselves. We chose companions that needed our protection. Humans chose companions that could protect them. That's a fundamental difference in thinking. Jake listened, unsure if this was good or bad for him. The question is whether this difference makes humans dangerous or valuable, Commandant Thresher said. Both, probably, Dr. Morena said. But isn't that what we need to find out? The Academy's mission is to train officers who can work together despite their differences. This is an extreme case, granted, but the principle holds. The Commandant was quiet for a long time. He looked at Jake, then at the bears. Atlas had fallen asleep on the floor, snoring softly. Dakota was chewing on his own paw, completely relaxed. Cadet Morrison, Commandant Thresher said finally, I'm going to make an exception. Your companions may stay. However, there are conditions. Yes, sir, anything. First, you will undergo daily behavioral evaluations with Dr. Morena. Both you and the animals. Any sign of aggression or instability, they're gone. Second, you will give presentations to the other cadets about Earth animals and human bonding practices. Education may reduce fear. Third, your companions will be restricted to certain areas of the Academy. No classrooms, no dining halls, no restricted zones. They stay in your quarters or designated outdoor areas unless you have specific permission. I understand, sir. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, the Commandant said. You're going to face resistance from other cadets. Some will fear you. Some will resent the special treatment. Some will think humans are reckless fools who don't understand danger. You'll need to prove them wrong every single day. I will, sir. One more thing, Commander Yellick said. Those cubs are growing fast. In a few months, they'll be even larger. In a year, they'll be approaching adult size. What happens then? Jake hadn't thought that far ahead. I guess we'll figure it out, sir. Maybe they'll have their own quarters. Or maybe by then everyone will be used to them. Or maybe, Dr. Morena said with a slight smile, by then we'll understand humans well enough that having bears in the Academy seems perfectly normal. Commandant Thresher dismissed them. Jake walked back toward the barracks with Atlas and Dakota beside him. Word had already spread. Cadets lined the hallways, watching from a safe distance. Some looked scared. Some looked curious. Some looked angry. Jake kept walking, the cubs staying close. He had 4 years here. 4 years to prove that humans and their strange ways belonged in the Galactic Defense Coalition. 4 years to show that befriending apex predators wasn't crazy. It was just what humans did. 6 weeks passed. Jake fell into a routine at the Academy, though it was unlike anyone else's routine. Every morning started with Atlas and Dakota's feeding time at dawn. The cubs ate enormous amounts of food, and Jake had to special order their meals from the commissary. Then came training exercises, classes in galactic law and military tactics, and evening study sessions. The other cadets kept their distance. Sixes was polite but nervous. Voquim nodded to Jake in the halls but never stopped to talk. Clickresh avoided their quarters whenever the bears were inside. In the dining hall, Jake sat alone while other cadets clustered together at distant tables. It didn't help that Atlas and Dakota were growing fast. They had gained another 30 pounds each and now moved with visible power. When they played in the designated outdoor area behind the barracks, their wrestling matches shook the ground. Other cadets watched from behind safety glass, their faces a mix of fear and fascination. Dr. Morena conducted her daily evaluations with enthusiasm. She asked Jake hundreds of questions about Earth, about human history with animals, about how families chose their companions. She recorded everything. Your species has over 900 million dogs, she said one afternoon, reviewing her notes. Domesticated from wolves. Wolves that once competed with humans for food and territory? Yeah, Jake said. But then someone figured out that wolves could help with hunting. They could guard camps. They became partners instead of enemies. And then humans brought them into their homes, fed them, loved them, Dr. Morena said. Even though any wolf could kill a human child easily. Training and trust, Jake explained. You raise them right, treat them well, they become family. Same with Atlas and Dakota. They'd never hurt anyone unless that person was trying to hurt me first, and even then I'd call them off. Would they listen? Yes, they always listen. Dr. Morena made more notes. I'm writing a paper about this, about human psychology and risk tolerance. I think it will surprise people. The combat training class met twice a week in a large gymnasium. Cadets practiced hand-to-hand techniques, learned to use standard coalition weapons, and participated in tactical simulations. Jake enjoyed the physical challenges, even though he was smaller than most other cadets. Humans were built differently, lighter and faster than many species, but not as strong as the Drenthians or as flexible as the Valerians. Today's class was different. Instructor Korvax, a massive Drenthian with scars across his gray skin, announced a new exercise. You will complete a survival simulation, he said, his voice rumbling through the gym. Teams of 4. You'll be dropped on the Academy's moon for 48 hours with minimal supplies. You must reach a designated extraction point while avoiding natural hazards. This tests your ability to work together under stress. The cadets were divided into squads. Jake found himself assigned with Sixes, Clickresh, and a Frelian cadet named Gossix. Gossix was nervous even on good days, with pale green skin that changed colors based on emotion. Right now he was almost white. Great, Gossix muttered when he saw Jake. We get the human with the monsters. They're not monsters, Jake said. And they're coming with us, what? Sixes looked alarmed. The bears are going on the survival exercise. Part of my training requirements, Jake explained. Dr. Morena wants to see how they handle different environments. Don't worry, they won't cause problems. Clickresh made an unhappy clicking sound but said nothing. The next morning, the 4 cadets and 2 bears were transported to the moon's surface. The moon had breathable atmosphere and supported life, mostly plants and small animals. The temperature was cold, and the landscape was rocky with patches of dark forest. Instructor Korvax handed Jake a tracking device. The extraction point is 20 kilometers north. You have 48 hours. Don't die. The transport lifted off, leaving them alone. Sixes checked his navigation equipment. This way, he said, pointing toward a gap between 2 hills. If we maintain pace, we'll reach the extraction point with time to spare. They started walking. Atlas and Dakota ranged ahead, sniffing everything. Jake kept them close enough to see, but gave them freedom to explore. The cubs were happy, padding through the rocks with their noses down. Why are they doing that? Gossix asked, his skin now yellow with anxiety. All that sniffing. They're reading the environment, Jake said. Bears have incredible sense of smell. They can detect things we can't. Like what? Water sources. Other animals. Changes in weather, Jake explained. It's how they navigate in the wild. The hours passed slowly. They crossed a rocky plain, descended into a valley, and entered a forest of tall trees with purple leaves. The canopy blocked most of the sunlight, making everything dim and shadowy. Atlas and Dakota suddenly stopped. Their ears went forward and they stared into the trees ahead. Both cubs made low warning sounds. What's wrong? Sixes whispered. Something's there, Jake said quietly. They sense it. We should go around, Clickresh said. But before they could move, something emerged from the shadows. It was roughly the size of a large wolf, but built differently, with 6 legs and a head that was mostly mouth. Its skin was mottled gray and green, perfect camouflage for the forest. It looked at the cadets and growled, a deep sound that made the air vibrate. Gossix turned pure white and froze. Sixes reached for his communicator. Clickresh backed up slowly. The creature crouched, ready to charge. Its muscles bunched under its skin. This was a predator, and they were prey. Jake stepped forward. He didn't run. He didn't freeze. He moved between the creature and his squad mates and did something that made no sense to the others. He made himself bigger, spreading his arms wide, and let out a deep shout that came from his chest. It wasn't a scream of fear. It was a challenge. Atlas and Dakota responded instantly. They moved to Jake's sides, rose up on their hind legs, and roared. The sound was enormous, echoing through the forest. Even as cubs, they stood over 5 feet tall on their back legs. Their claws extended. Their teeth showed. They looked at the creature with eyes that said they were not afraid. The creature hesitated. It looked at the three figures in front of it, one human and two bears, all standing their ground. This wasn't prey behavior. This was something else. Jake took another step forward. "Get out of here," he said firmly. The creature made its decision. It turned and ran, crashing through the underbrush until the sounds faded. Jake waited a full minute before relaxing. Atlas and Dakota dropped back to all fours, looking pleased with themselves. Jake scratched their ears. "Good boys?" "Very good boys," he turned around. His squadmates were staring at him. "What was that?" Sixes breathed. "That was a predator realizing we were a bigger threat than it wanted to deal with," Jake said. "You stood up to it," Gossick said. His skin was slowly returning to pale green. "So you didn't run." "Running would have triggered its chase instinct," Jake explained. "Bears taught me that. When you face a threat, you make yourself big. You stand your ground. Most predators don't want to fight they might lose. They want easy prey." "But it could have killed you," Clickresh said. "Maybe. But probably not before Atlas and Dakota tore it apart," Jake said. "And it knew that. Predators are smart. They assess risk. We showed it the risk was too high." They continued walking, but something had changed. The other cadets stayed closer to Jake now. When they made camp for the night, Gossix actually sat next to him. "How did you learn that?" Gossix asked. "The thing with making yourself big? My dad taught me. He works with bears and sometimes with wild predators that come near our sanctuary," Jake said. "He always says respect is better than fear. Show a predator you're not easy prey, and most times it'll leave you alone." "Most times," Sixies repeated. "Nothing's guaranteed. But panic gets you killed faster than anything," Jake said. That night they took turns on watch. When it was Jake's shift, Atlas and Dakota stayed awake with him. The cubs sat on either side, alert to every sound. Once something moved in the darkness beyond their camp. Both bears growled softly, and whatever it was moved away. Gossix, who was supposed to be sleeping, watched from his bedroll. "They're protecting us," he whispered to Sixies. "Yes," Sixies whispered back. "They are." The next day's journey was easier. The cadets moved with more confidence. When they reached the extraction point with 3 hours to spare, Instructor Korvax was waiting. "Report," he ordered. Sixes gave the details of their journey, including the encounter with the predator. Korvax listened, then looked at Jake. "You stood your ground against a gricklin," the instructor said. "That species is responsible for several cadet injuries in past exercises." "We handled it, sir," Jake said. "Because of your bears." "Because we worked together, sir," Jake corrected. "My squad didn't panic. They trusted me. That's what made the difference." Korvax's expression was unreadable. "Interesting answer, Cadet." On the transport back to the academy, Gossick sat next to Jake. So did Sixes. Clickresh didn't avoid them. They talked about the exercise, about the forest, about what they'd learned. "You were right," Gossick said quietly. "They're not monsters. They're protectors. They're family," Jake said simply. Word spread fast at the academy. The story of Jake's squad facing down a gricklin got bigger with each telling. Some cadets remained afraid, but others started to see things differently. A few even approached Jake in the halls to ask questions about Earth and its animals. Atlas and Dakota became famous. When they played in the outdoor area, cadets gathered to watch. Some were still behind the safety glass, but some came closer. One brave Vel 3 months into the academy term, Dr. Morena requested permission to hold a mandatory lecture for all cadets and staff. Commandant Thresher approved it, though he looked skeptical when she described her topic. The lecture hall filled quickly. All 200 cadets attended, along with instructors and administrative staff. The room buzzed with conversation in a dozen different languages. Jake sat in the back with Atlas and Dakota at his feet. The bears were getting big now, each weighing close to 200 pounds. They took up considerable space. Sixes had saved Jake a seat. That was new. After the survival exercise, Sixes had become friendlier. So had Gossix and even Clickresh, though the insectoid cadet still kept a respectful distance from the bears. Dr. Morena walked onto the stage. The lights dimmed and a holographic display activated behind her. "Thank you all for coming," she began. "Today I want to discuss companion-animal relationships across different species and what they reveal about our psychology. This research was inspired by Cadet Morrison and his unusual choice of companions. Images appeared: Valerian comfort pets, Cathari larvae, Drenthian eye-catchers, and dozens of other small, harmless creatures. Then the display showed Atlas and Dakota. "Notice the difference," Dr. Morena said. "Every species in the coalition has companion animals that share certain traits. They're small. They're herbivores or mild omnivores. They depend on us for survival. They pose no physical threat. Now look at the human companions." The display changed. Images of dogs appeared, then cats, then horses, then birds of prey. Each image included information about the animal's size, diet, and capabilities. Humans domesticated wolves, one of the most efficient pack hunters on their planet. They keep cats, which are obligate carnivores with hunting instincts so strong that house cats kill billions of small animals annually, even when well fed. They ride horses, which can kick hard enough to shatter bones. They train birds that can strike at speeds over 200 miles per hour. A Drenthian cadet raised his hand. "Dr. Moreno, why would any species do this?" "Excellent question. Let me show you something." The display changed to show a map of Earth with highlighted regions. Red zones covered huge portions of the continents. This shows where apex predators lived on Earth before human civilization expanded. Bears, big cats, wolves, crocodilians, large birds of prey. Humans didn't evolve in isolation. They evolved in direct competition with these predators, both hunting the same prey, both defending territory, both capable of killing each other. Images appeared showing ancient human history. Cave paintings depicted humans and wolves together. Carvings showed people with large cats. Statues honored birds and bears. Most species in the coalition evolved as prey animals or secondary consumers. Dr. Morena continued, "Your ancestors survived by fleeing from predators, by hiding, by developing keen senses to detect danger. This shaped your psychology. You see predators as threats to avoid?" "That's logical," someone called out. "Yes, it is, for your species. But humans evolved differently. They were both predator and prey. They competed with apex predators, and instead of just fleeing or fighting, they did something remarkable. They formed alliances." The display showed ancient humans hunting with wolves, using horses for transportation, employing birds to locate prey. Each image demonstrated cooperation between humans and animals that could easily kill them. "Humans didn't domesticate animals that needed protection," Dr. Morena said. "They domesticated animals that could offer partnership. They chose companions based on mutual benefit, not dependence. A wolf could help hunt and guard. A horse could carry loads and move quickly. A bird could scout from above. These were strategic alliances. But the risk," a Valerian instructor said. "Surely many humans died in these attempts." "Undoubtedly," Dr. Morena agreed. "But enough succeeded that the practice continued. Over thousands of years, humans refined their ability to read predator behavior, to train and bond with dangerous animals, to build relationships based on respect rather than dominance." She pressed a control and video footage appeared. It showed Jake with Atlas and Dakota during one of their training sessions. The bears responded to hand signals, sat on command, and followed Jake through obstacle courses. "This is the result," Dr. Morena said. "Cadet Morrison can direct two apex predators with simple gestures. They trust him completely. He trusts them completely. This relationship would be impossible for most species because it requires a fundamental comfort with danger that we simply don't possess." Gossix raised his hand. His skin was thoughtful blue. "Dr. Morena, are you saying humans aren't afraid of predators?" "No. Fear is a healthy survival instinct. Humans feel fear, but they process it differently. When most species encounter an apex predator, fear triggers flight. When humans encounter the same predator, fear triggers a decision tree. Can I escape? Can I fight? Can I negotiate? Can I befriend this creature?" "Befriend," Clickresh repeated, his voice skeptical. "You cannot befriend something that wants to eat you, can't you?" Dr. Morena asked. Humans did exactly that with wolves. The ancestors of dogs were pack predators that viewed humans as competitors or prey. But some humans noticed that wolves had valuable skills, and some wolves noticed that humans had valuable resources. Slowly, carefully, they built trust. Both species benefited. That's not insanity. That's sophisticated risk assessment and long-term strategic thinking. The lecture hall was quiet now. Every cadet and instructor watched the screen, which showed more examples of human-animal partnerships throughout history. "This brings me to my main conclusion," Dr. Morena said. "Human psychology is fundamentally different from ours in one key aspect: their relationship with risk. We minimize risk by avoiding danger. Humans minimize risk by understanding danger and, when possible, converting it into advantage. She pulled up another image. This one showed military units throughout human history. Cavalry with horses, handlers with war dogs, falconers directing birds in battle. Humans brought their predator companions into warfare. They didn't do this because they were foolish. They did it because it worked. A trained war dog could detect enemies that human senses missed. A horse cavalry unit could move faster than infantry. These dangerous animals became force multipliers. Instructor Korvac stood. "Dr. Morena, are you suggesting we should adopt human methods?" "I'm suggesting we understand them," she replied. The Galactic Defense Coalition recruited humans because they excel at tactical thinking and remain calm under pressure. Now we know why. They're comfortable with risk. They've spent millennia learning to work alongside creatures that could kill them. When a crisis occurs, they don't panic. They assess and act. She looked around the hall. "How many of you panicked when you first saw Cadet Morrison's bears?" Nearly every hand went up. Jake tried not to smile. "And how many of you have changed your opinion after seeing how he interacts with them?" Fewer hands, but still many. Sixes raised his hand. So did Gossix and several others from their cohort. "This is the learning curve," Dr. Moreno said. "At first the bears seemed like threats because that's how we're wired to see apex predators. But observation taught you that trained predators under human control are not threats. They're tools, partners, even protectors." She clicked to a final image. It showed the survival exercise, the moment when Jake and the bears faced down the Gricklin. Someone had captured it on a recorder, and the image showed Jake standing tall with Atlas and Dakota roaring beside him. "This moment crystallizes everything," Dr. Morena said. When faced with danger, Cadet Morrison didn't flee. He confronted it. His companions didn't attack unnecessarily. They presented a display of force that ended the threat without violence. This is sophisticated threat management. Most species solve problems by avoiding predators. Humans solve problems by becoming the bigger predator. She let that sink in. The question for all of you is this: are you willing to learn from humans? Are you willing to reconsider your assumptions about danger and risk? Because if we're going to work together in the coalition, we need to understand that humans will always approach problems differently than you do. They'll suggest strategies that seem reckless. They'll form bonds that seem impossible. They'll take risks that make you uncomfortable. Dr. Morena looked directly at the audience. But they'll also surprise you with their effectiveness. They'll solve problems you thought were unsolvable. They'll survive situations that would kill most of us, because they've been training for this their entire evolutionary history. The lecture ended. The lights came up. For a moment, nobody moved. Then cadets began standing, talking among themselves. The conversation was intense. Jake stayed seated, uncertain how to feel about being analyzed like a research subject. Atlas nudged his hand, wanting attention. Dakota yawned and stretched. Sixes turned to him. "Did you know all that? About human history with predators?" "Some of it," Jake said. "But my family just sees it as normal. We don't think about it being weird." "It's not weird," Gossix said. His skin was calm green now. "It's impressive. Terrifying, but impressive." Other cadets approached. Akthari asked to take pictures of the bears. Adrenthian wanted to know if humans really rode horses, and 4 years passed faster than Jake expected. The nervous first-year cadet who arrived with 2 bear cubs became a confident senior preparing for graduation. Atlas and Dakota had grown into their full size, massive grizzlies that weighed over 700 pounds each. They no longer fit on Jake's desk. They had their own space in a specially built enclosure connected to his quarters. The academy had changed too. After Dr. Morena's lecture and years of watching Jake work with the bears, attitudes shifted. Fear gave way to curiosity, then to acceptance. Other cadets asked Jake to teach them about animal behavior. Some even requested permission to visit Earth and see its wildlife firsthand. The biggest change came in the second year, when 3 more human cadets arrived. Each brought companion animals from Earth. One had 2 German shepherds, descendants of wolves. Another brought a caracal, a medium-sized wildcat with long ear tufts. The third arrived with a juvenile crocodile that spent most of its time in a specialized water tank. At first, the other species panicked again. But Jake and his now famous bears had paved the way. The academy established protocols for predator companions. Designated areas were created. Training requirements were standardized. What had been shocking became normal. By Jake's final year, seeing humans walking with large predators was just part of academy life. Some cadets from other species even expressed jealousy that their homeworlds lacked such impressive animals. Graduation day arrived with perfect weather. The ceremony took place in the main courtyard under Valara Prime's 3 suns. Rows of seats filled with graduating cadets in their dress uniforms. Behind them sat instructors and staff. In the honored guest section, ambassadors from across the Galactic Coalition watched the proceedings. Jake sat with his cohort. Sixes was there, now confident and poised. Gossix had overcome his nervous nature and earned top marks in tactical planning. Clickresh had become one of the Academy's best pilots. They had all grown together. Atlas and Dakota waited backstage in a special holding area. They wore ceremonial collars for the occasion, decorated with the Academy's insignia. At 4 years old, they were fully mature, enormous bears with thick fur and intelligent eyes. They knew something important was happening today. Commandant Thresher, now grayer but still commanding, stepped to the podium. Today we recognize 52 cadets who have completed our 4-year program. They come from 23 different worlds. They represent the best of their species, and they are ready to serve the Galactic Defense Coalition as officers. The ceremony proceeded through various speakers and awards. Jake received commendations for xenobiology studies and first contact protocols. His work with Dr. Morena had resulted in 3 published papers on interspecies cooperation. Then Commandant Thresher announced something unexpected. We have a special presentation today. For the first time in Academy history, a graduating cadet will address the assembly about the nature of partnership across species barriers. Cadet Morrison, please come forward. Jake stood, his heart pounding. He walked to the podium while the audience applauded politely. The ambassadors watched with interest. He saw humans among them, including the Coalition's senior human representative, Admiral Lisa Grant, one of the first 2 humans to graduate from this very academy. Jake reached the podium and activated his prepared presentation. But before the images appeared, he signaled backstage. Atlas and Dakota walked out, moving with dignity. They positioned themselves on either side of the podium, sat down and waited calmly. A ripple went through the audience. The ambassadors from prey species tensed, but the graduating cadets barely reacted. They had seen this many times before. 4 years ago, I arrived at this academy with 2 bear cubs, Jake began. Many of you were terrified. Some wanted me expelled. Others thought I was crazy. He paused. You weren't entirely wrong to think that. Scattered laughter. On Earth we have a saying, familiarity breeds contempt. But I've learned the opposite is also true. Familiarity breeds understanding. When you first saw Atlas and Dakota, you saw predators, dangerous animals that could kill. You saw them through the lens of your own evolutionary history, where predators meant death. Images appeared behind him showing various Coalition species homeworlds. Each image highlighted the relatively safe ecosystems, where most intelligent species had evolved. Your worlds are beautiful, peaceful. Your ancestors developed intelligence in environments where cooperation and caution were rewarded. You learned to avoid danger, and that wisdom kept your species alive. He changed the image to Earth. Predators filled the screen. Bears, wolves, big cats, crocodiles, sharks, venomous snakes, and dozens more. Earth is different. Humans evolved in constant competition with apex predators. We couldn't just avoid danger. It was everywhere. So we developed different survival strategies. We learned to read predator behavior. We invented tools to defend ourselves. And eventually we did something that seemed impossible. We turned some predators into partners. The images shifted to show ancient humans with wolves, then medieval falconers, then modern trainers working with large animals. This wasn't stupidity. It was strategic thinking. A wolf has better senses than a human. A horse can run faster and carry more weight. A bird can see from heights we can't reach. By forming bonds with these animals, we gained abilities our bodies didn't naturally possess. Jake placed a hand on Atlas's head. The massive bear leaned into the touch. But it required something difficult. It required trust. We had to trust that an animal capable of killing us would choose not to. And they had to trust that we would provide food, safety, and respect. That mutual trust is the foundation of partnership. He looked out at the audience. During my time here, I've learned that humans aren't the only species capable of building unexpected partnerships. I've watched Sixes overcome his fear to work alongside creatures that terrified him. I've seen Gossiks develop confidence by learning that danger can be managed rather than just avoided. I've observed instructors from prey species teaching combat tactics because they understand that avoiding conflict isn't always possible. The images changed again, showing photos from their 4 years, training exercises, study groups, the survival expedition where they face the Grickland together. We're different species with different instincts. Humans will always be more comfortable with risk than most of you. You'll always be more cautious than we are. But that's exactly why we need each other. Your caution prevents reckless mistakes. Our risk tolerance enables bold action. Together we're stronger than apart. He gestured to Atlas and Dakota. These bears taught the Academy an important lesson. They showed you that what seems dangerous can become protective. What seems impossible can become routine. What seems alien can become familiar. That's what partnership means, whether between human and bear or between different species in the coalition. Jake pulled up one final image. It showed the expanding borders of coalition space, with unexplored regions marked in gray. We're about to graduate and take our places as officers in the Defense Coalition. We'll explore unknown systems. We'll make first contact with new species. We'll face threats we can't predict. And we'll do it together, bringing our different strengths to solve problems none of us could solve alone. He looked at his classmates. 4 years ago, you saw me as the crazy human with dangerous pets. Now you see them as Atlas and Dakota, individuals you know and respect. That transformation from fear to understanding is what makes the coalition work. We don't have to be the same. We just have to be willing to learn about each other. Atlas and Dakota stood up. Jake gave a subtle hand signal, and both bears rose onto their hind legs. Standing at their full height, they towered over everyone on the stage. The ambassadors gasped, but Jake simply placed a hand on each bear's chest and they dropped back down to all fours, gentle and controlled. "Thank you for teaching me these 4 years," Jake said. "Thank you for accepting what must have seemed like madness. And thank you for proving that different species can work together even when our instincts tell us it's impossible." The applause started slowly, then built. The graduating cadets stood, clapping hard. The instructors joined them. Even some of the ambassadors rose to their feet. Admiral Grant was smiling broadly. Jake returned to his seat while Atlas and Dakota followed, completely calm despite the noise and crowd. Sixes reached over and gripped Jake's shoulder. "That was excellent," Sixes said. 4 years ago, I would have run from those bears. Now I consider them friends." "They like you too," Jake said. The rest of the ceremony passed in a blur of names being called, diplomas being awarded, and ranks being officially conferred. When Jake received his commission as a lieutenant, Atlas and Dakota stood beside him for the official photograph. That image would later appear in recruitment materials across Coalition space. After the ceremony, a reception was held in the Academy's main hall. Jake found himself surrounded by well-wishers and curious ambassadors. Admiral Grant worked her way through the crowd to reach him. "Lieutenant Morrison," she said, offering her hand. Impressive speech. "Even more impressive companions. Thank you, Admiral. It's an honor to meet you." "I heard about the approval process for bringing bears to the Academy," Admiral Grant said with a knowing smile. "Automated systems can be very helpful sometimes,